a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out to Adrian Quintana, Alistair Main, Billy Highvault, Burn Fat Till My Stomach Is As Flat As The Earth, Chow Yun Cat, Dank, Dave Rakia Gifford, new Patreon, shout out to you my friend, David Wayne Foster, Edwin Johnson, Felix Hung, Fireball X, Godrockin, Jeronism, Joshua, Kirsten, Life Is Short, Matt, Michael, Nyby, Page Love, Tar Craig, Reinhardt, Renee, Sally Ballis, Sam Hine, Skeptic936, Texas Mike, FlatEarthChannel.com, Tina Baker, and Tom Hawkins. Massive shout outs to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now, while I set up for today's first live show, I'll actually leave you with the company of a few guests, as we do have a few people in
they don't have
Discord
anything.
and Google. What, sorry?
Talking about the Globetars, they have no arguments. I like on the last show, which was the Sunday show, yesterday's show, where the housekeeping questions you guys have put up here for a couple of years, no one comes down, no one could even debate them. And then they put up their housekeeping questions. We have to correct them because they didn't ask questions. And then after they corrected their housekeeping questions, the Globetars, that is, in one run without any trial, without any time to think, the whole panel took it apart. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, it's a total embarrassment when they presented those, because they'd worked on them for a fair amount of time, a couple of weeks, maybe 10 days. And then... Sorry, say again, Flatsoid?
I don't know, he's having trouble with his mic. You were saying they took an amount of time to prepare, and then what?
Then we took it apart, on the fly, one at a time,
Yeah.
without having heard them before. And yet, on their side of the argument, they tell us how we don't understand the things, the troubling things we put to them. They claim we don't understand them. And then they go away, as Zanuck did, and they have to research them and try and find an answer and square the circles and put leading questions to people deemed to be more intelligent than those people. So you think, we're not troubling ourselves in those regards. You know, far from it. We've been asking the same questions for, 2 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting how the evidence comes out that Zanuck goes on these other forums and plays the game.
Got Unicorn Laser Eyes and Dougie in Discord.
Righteous. Is Righteous on?
No, not yet. I've unmuted them for now.
All right.
About half an hour before the live show. I'm going to finish off making my cup of coffee. I won't be a sec. Hopefully you'll talk amongst yourselves.
All right. if Flat Earth can get his mic to work. Hmm.
Was it just entirely dead air that entire time?
Yeah, Flat Earth dropped off. I was the only one here.
Wonderful. Let's take chemo off. Not that there's much use now, because I'm here. Hey, chemo.
Hello. Can you hear me? Am I coming through all right?
Yeah. Perfect.
Going absolutely crazy. Did you see the Jam Pandas thing last night?
Nope.
Did anybody watch it?
Nope.
People catch it. Okay, so they were talking about Anthony's court case. And they showed when, you said in the beginning, we've got something great. Anthony's putting forward his paper or his idea. He's saved all that. He's cut it and then to forward to now. And then he got a lawyer in, like his own lawyer, to look at Anthony's paper to see if it was what they think it is or it isn't or isn't. And you've got to watch it. Yeah, you should have checked it out, really. I thought you'd have watched it, but
Tell us what the outcome was.
Connected, but let me give you the so the outcome was they posted this. They said Anthony put something in his okay. I'm just going to scroll up now. Hold on. Yeah, so section 18 of Anthony's, I'll post it in here and I'll read it. So they said, this debunks Anthony's own case. So Mr. Chamberlain persuasively pointed out in his skeleton, scientific hypotheses do not themselves constitute political views. So that's their conclusion, that what we're trying to say, that it's partisan, a political view, that scientific hypotheses themselves do not but I was like, this is it's not just about the science, it's about what's being taught, if it can be challenged, if you can
they're saying
go against it.
They're saying that the provision themselves, they're saying that I don't follow what you're saying isn't political. Just do me a favour, Spurs. Are you in front of a computer?
Yeah.
Type in the word political.
Yeah.
Just tell me what comes up.
Oh, in Google, yeah. Political, relating to the government or public affairs of a country.
Public affairs of a country, you say?
I do.
So, you're telling me this isn't political? The education of children, part of the public affairs of the country. I would say yes, Spurs.
I would say yes as well. I was just arguing with that, and of course it's political. Schools, they take an interest in what they learn. So the government doesn't want some group teaching something that goes against the government. They'd have an interest in what's being taught. So I was like, it is political if it's not scientific.
However,
because not the hypothesis.
Whether or not this would be a win, lose, or draw situation if it got to court is entirely irrelevant. That is not the objective. This is not going to make it in front of a judge. This is not a case that's going to be fought in court. This will never reach the point where a judge adjudicates on his interpretation of whether or not partisan political views fall under the definition of political when talking about the indoctrination of the Copernican model to a child in a school. That's never going to happen. This isn't going to court. So while it might be fascinating to have a lawyer look at Anthony's paper, which is being submitted to academia, and demonstrating his academic knowledge and his ability to argue and put points forward in law. Whether or not the case would win, which there isn't one, is entirely irrelevant. Now, Anthony pointed this out to Tim Osman and Jem Panda on their first little go. It seems you've missed the point. This isn't going to court. Hello? Yeah, you need to get a handle on the objective that's actually trying to be achieved. Because they have obviously missed the point again. Because they're arguing about whether or not Anthony's case would win. No, this isn't a case. This is a educational submission. Yeah, missed the point again, it seems. 2 for 2 so far. Maybe third time's a charm and they'll actually get the point on the third occasion. We shall see.
That's what I was saying. They were looking for any excuse.
Let's see if I can get him
in.
Hold on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Sun. For me, the Sun seems to be
Anthony. Sorry to interrupt. I'm
recording, point of light. It doesn't seem to be a tangible physical thing that you could land a rocket on.
It's not. Or the moon.
Hello, Anthony. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi.
Got Spurs in. You're on. We're being recorded, just so you're aware. So Spurs immediately, as soon as I've started the pre-show, has started telling me about this being a discussion over on the Globe side. And we're just at the stage that I've pointed out to Spurs that for the second time around they've missed the point. Apparently they've got a solicitor to come along and argue the merits of whether or not your case would win. And I've pointed out that they're completely missing the point of the purpose of the paper. It's not about whether or not
a solicitor would really, if they've really got a solicitor, they would really have the real answer, the real point, and they're obviously missing the point if they're going to that. So leave them to it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if Spurs you want to summarise.
Yeah, I was going to say it was on last night on Jem's Sunday roast, and they got that. You might have known that Arterix or something, that lawyer. And he posted the section 8 where it says, Mr. Chamberlain persuasively pointed out that in his skeleton, scientific hypotheses do not themselves constitute political views. So that was their main focus, that, it's not partisan, it's not political. This is, your points are not valid. So I don't think they quite get what you're trying to do. So again, you probably have to repeat.
What number was that?
Number 8, where... talks about Mr. Chamberlain persuasively pointed out in his skeleton
that was
at
what
paragraph 7.
You'd read out, Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
I've got it. So if you read the second part of what it says, Spurs, I'll read the first bit that supports that assertion, but pay attention to what the second bit says. It says scientific hypotheses, such as hypothesis that climate change is mainly attributable to man-made emissions of greenhouse gases, do not themselves constitute political views within meaning of 407, even if they are doubted by particular political groups. But it continues, it says, but in any event, nothing in the 1996 Act obliges teachers to adopt a position of studied neutrality between, on the one hand, scientific views, which reflect the great majority of world scientific opinion, and on the other hand, a minority view held by a few dissenting scientists. So the point about the topic being science or not isn't the point. The point is whether it's being presented in or promoted in a partisan political way. So that's a red herring argument. Yes, they can argue that all day. I agree with them. That's not my point that I was making. The point that I was making is that it's promoted in a partisan political way. That's the point, not the content.
I think the confusion is this. I think, again, don't shoot me down. Just asking. This is where they're confused. So is it going to court? And Nathan just said it's not going to court, but is it supposed to go to court, to a journal, to the press, to a school, to a university? Who will look at this paper, make a decision, and essentially change something based on your paper? Who looks at this?
At this point, the point is to get it published so that it can be cited as a document of discussion to stimulate and encourage this open discussion where it's not just considered to be dismissal with ridicule. It's discussed. That's the main point. Now, if there's something credible out there that suggests that perhaps things might not be taught in a totally legal way, then that makes it like it doesn't make it dismissal with ridicule as a realistic possible outcome. You've got to look at it and say, well, is it being taught illegally or not? And that's really the point that I'm
Anthony.
trying to demonstrate, that this might not be
Anthony.
as legal as what they like preach that it's legal.
Anthony, discuss where, like, and again, just be more clear. Do you mean in universities, like with students, between
No.
teachers?
It'll
Who would
be
discuss and where? Like online?
I'll get it published on the website, on their website, so that it has a link. Then that's the intention, to get it published on their website, so that it is then a documented conversation, discussion point, because that is the point we're trying to get. Basically, the question is it being taught lawfully?
Because on Gems yesterday, he showed a part where you said, if the ball earthers were to put evidence in front of a judge on a table, because I was interested in that part, they wouldn't be able to prove their claims. So it's nothing to do with going to court then, right?
Yeah, that's an isolated example. This specific submission is not going in front of a judge. I don't think. I still don't think a lot of people who are seeing this, maybe for the first time, maybe they didn't pay attention when Anthony first started discussing it. This isn't going to go forward for adjudication. Whether or not the point win, loses, or draws isn't the point of the paper. That's not what its objective is.
It's to get people talking about whether or not this is being treated lawfully or not. It's because at the minute, Spurs, everything's dismissed with ridicule, right? We're seen as being lepers, that we're all idiots, and that's silly. Because at the end of the day, there is a legitimate topic of discussion there, a debate, and it should be treated as discussion, not as dismissal with ridicule. And the idea is to just to get people talking, ultimately to get people talking. And if it turns out that somebody looks at it and goes, maybe there's something here, maybe it can progress from there. But ultimately, can they demonstrate that the promotion of partisan politics is not happening in the national curriculum or not? Is the point. Can it be demonstrated that it's not? And that's the point I'm saying, maybe it is. And they're saying, no, it's definitely not. It's not a one-sided tuition.
Yeah.
Well,
when you say can they demonstrate, do you mean to you or to who?
At this point,
you say can they demonstrate? Level, are you talking about to each other, to the who?
At this point, it's academic. At this point, it's academic. It isn't legal at this point, is it? It's just academic. So it's kind of like quasi-legal in the sense that it's not real world yet. It's just being academically discussed. But from there, people then ask questions from it, and they'll go, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. And you don't know where it's going to go. It may never go anywhere. But hopefully, the more I beat my drum about it, the more people will just start talking about the topic in general, and that's what I'm hoping to achieve. Spurs, let me just read the next paragraph that they've not mentioned to you. The first one that we just talked about, scientific hypothesis and all that. The next sentence, the next paragraph, number 19, says, of course that it's right that 406 and 407 are not concerned with scientific disputes or with the approaches of teachers to them. However, as will be seen, some of the errors or departures from the mainstream by Al Gore in his video do arise in the context of alarmism and exaggeration, and this is the most important bit, in support of his political thesis. Well, if it's the case that balls, I'll come back to it, one sec.
Wonderful.
Did you?
Must say, very interesting.
I'm not sure whether I even understand what was being debated about an academic paper that's been submitted.
I think Anthony is just getting it to a level where it could be taken seriously for peer review by the academic societies themselves. It's not meant to go to court.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't a legal submission for an argument in front of a judge. I think that's where the point might be getting missed. But they've brought solicitors in, have they? I find that quite ironic.
Which I thought was brilliant.
Wow.
Because they've literally got somebody to come along and say, let's assess this as a case. It's like,
wow,
why?
Yeah. Yeah. And what conclusion did the solicitor draw, just out of curiosity?
Spurs?
they just posted this the Chamberlain and said, well, it's not political. They understand that the judge would throw it out because it's not political. So I'll be able to say that it's not for the judge. It's to get discussion with academics on board. So I think the way he presented it last night, Jem, was that it was for a court case of some kind. That's how it looked.
I think, it's an academic paper, of course, but I think a solicitor coming in, and, I don't know how much time he would have spent on it, but a solicitor coming in to say a judge would throw that out of court, I would question what sort of a solicitor he is, because solicitors can't come to that conclusion. A good solicitor would actually look at the arguments on both sides and maybe give you a probability percentage on what the percentage of you actually going to win that case could potentially be. But I don't think any solicitor or barrister that's got any integrity would automatically just say, well, look, I've looked at this for 5 minutes and a judge would throw it out. I think that's been a little bit premature, to be honest with you. Even if it was if it wasn't just an academic paper, if it was an actual legal submission, I don't think that there's actually there's not someone who credible that would say that after looking at something for about an hour, even a day, even 2 days, like that sort of, to come up with that sort of conclusion, you would need to, and to say you're a solicitor, well, you'd need to really put some thought into it and definitely debate it, and you would have to go back and do a lot of research, and I would state that it would take a lot longer than a week.
I think they're just looking for holes. I mean, I think they're really panicking. I mean, if you watch
sounds very biased. He made up his mind before time.
Yeah, but the thing is, Spurs, what they've got to do is they've got to understand that in that Dimmock case, they didn't define, because it was an overtly political film, there was no discussion about what is political in that context. And because of that, we've kind of been deprived of knowing what is political and what's not. Now, we can argue all day over what is or is not political. And if you think this and I think that, then so be it. And ultimately, without a judge defining it for us in that case, we're having to piss in the wind and guess. Now, at the end of the day, so long as it's promotion of partisan political views, then that's the law breached. Now, you can pick any of them 3 key words and you can argue that that's not satisfied. But at the end of the day, without the judge's definition without the judge's direction for what is political, it could be anything, because one judge on one day might take a different view to a different judge on a different day, and you'd never know what the judge is going to interpret. But my argument is, well, this could be political, and if it is political, then there might be a bit of a query to answer. Now, we might go to court and the judge might say, nah, this is definitely not political, and Jeremy-esque. But on the other hand, another judge on a different day might say, yeah, it is political. It is the states of the affair, or the affairs of the state, or whatever. And you just don't know. So all I'm doing is saying, I think there's an angle here. You might not agree. You're entitled not to agree. But overall, without it going to court, you'd never know.
You know, like, I mean, we know their view, but what is their political view or their partisan view that you let me
just reiterate something, Spurs. Let me just reiterate something. This is an academic paper. So in order to qualify the criteria that Anthony has to qualify, he doesn't have to present a case that will win. He doesn't have to present a case that will be adjudicated. He doesn't have to present a case that will ever reach a courtroom. That's not the purpose. So the fact that we're discussing it, the fact that we're saying, well, I think a judge might do this. Really? Well, that means that Anthony's paper has certainly qualified the criteria it needed to qualify then, because apparently there's enough of the meat on the bones in terms of the criteria of the paper for them to bring in a solicitor. So it's worthy of them getting a solicitor to put his eyes over it. Yeah, it definitely qualifies the criteria in academia based on the fact that they're even discussing it. Tick in the box. Whether or not it wins or not, that would be entirely irrelevant.
And we would never know, because unless it actually did. It could be anybody's argument that wins or loses, and you can't tell. The only thing what we can say
twice, Anthony. You said 2.5 times.
Pardon?
He was saying that he really went over your paper, so they read it, more than once, just to make sure that the claims that he was trying to put forward, that he was right. So
it doesn't matter.
They're panicking.
It doesn't matter.
No. Let me try again. So what this solicitor is saying is, I could meet you in court and argue you are wrong. Correct?
Something to the effect, yeah. Like,
Right.
This is not political.
Hold on,
yet.
Spurs. I just need a yes, Spurs. I just need a yes. Yes, they're arguing that Anthony could go to court and be proven wrong. In the paper, Anthony doesn't actually put forward his side, only that there could be an argument to be had. Now, he could easily say the argument is that this would lose on these grounds. Now, that's not part of the criteria. He doesn't have to prove which side of the case might win or lose. That's not part of the criteria. In fact, it's entirely irrelevant, as I keep saying. But the fact that they're discussing it and saying that they could go to court over this and win on this point is entirely the point of the paper. The fact that it could go there, could be discussed, and what they're saying Globe Earth would win. Oh, wow, that's fascinating, in your opinion. But it meets the criteria of what the academic paper needs to fulfill the criteria has been exemplified by the fact they're arguing about it.
Spurs, look at the last paragraph of the last sentence of the paper. It says, ultimately, the question for a court to decide is whether or not the teachings of the Copernican model are actually da-da-da. So it's a question for the court to decide. And sure, we can all agree and disagree over any part of it you want. Doesn't mean that the judge would agree with either anybody's opinion on the day. And it could be literally any judge can have a different view to a different judge at any time for any reason. And it could just be that you get a flat earther and he goes, yeah, this is, or you get somebody like, what's his name? David Attenborough, who's an absolute massive evolutionist and puts it straight in the bin. So, and they shouldn't be biased, but we all know that they really are. So it depends on who you get on the day. But ultimately, it would be a question for the court to decide, and you could argue it in amongst yourselves, and you wouldn't know until the judgment was made. And we didn't get the benefit of knowing what the definitions were, because the main part of it, the argument that these are arguing against political, wasn't defined in the original Dimmock case because it was just accepted that it was political. But that's the point, isn't it? Is it political, and where do you draw? How do you work it out? And we don't know. We can argue it, and they can argue it, and we might be right, or they might be right. But only when it gets to court would anybody really ever know.
The fact that there's enough of a balance within Anthony's paper for the other side to say, I could win this. Well, Anthony could easily phrase his paper with a bias towards their side of the argument, and it would still pass. It wouldn't make any difference which side of the argument Anthony's on. He's got to present both sides. The fact they're going, oh, well, I could easily weasel my side to win out of this if it got to court. Oh, beautiful. So that would mean Anthony passes his paper then. No, isn't that nice? So he has got enough legal contextualisation for it to be argued about by a solicitor that it would lose. Well, Anthony could have easily been writing this paper from the Globehead side and be pointing out that it would lose, and it would still fulfil the criteria. Not that I'm agreeing with them, but I'm just saying that that doesn't make any difference to the submission in an academic regard. In fact, it bolsters the fact that he needs a balanced view to be put forth. So he has done that then. Oh, wonderful. More likely to pass then. Thank you, solicitor.
Spurs.
Wonderful.
Spurs, let me ask you this. Do you remember when Jamie Oliver made a big stink quite recently about the standard of school dinners that kids were being fed? He said it was all basically nutritional, processed shit that they should be teaching fresh food, meat and veg. Do you remember?
Yeah.
That in itself, school meals, isn't political by nature. But when Jamie, what's his face, makes a big song and dance out of it, all of a sudden it then becomes a bit of a political hot potato. So the issue itself isn't really political, but if you stir up enough of a fucking drama about it, it then quickly becomes political. So it becomes an issue. Now, right now, Flat Earth isn't really an argument that it's just dismissed ridicule. It's not even considered political, right? But if it did become political, that's when there's going to be problems, isn't there? But the teaching of the Copernican model in itself isn't political. That's what the case says. In the same way that school dinners aren't political. But if there's enough of a rally and support about it, and people are talking about it, which is the momentum that's gained as a result of an issue, then at some point it does become political, right?
I mean, I agree completely. I'm just telling you what they,
so let them say what they want. From. Until it goes to court, nobody would know either way.
It's never going to court.
I've
done this all morning. I've done this all bloody morning. This is not going to court. The fact that we're having this discussion on who, why, win, lose, or draw is pointless. It's not the purpose. It's not the root of the paper. Yeah, it's nice. It's great that we can have an argument about it. That's lovely. But we're not going to... Anthony doesn't need to carry out what is presented in that paper and put together a winning legal case. That's just it's just ludicrous.
It's an academic paper, I think, that's been put forth for debate, which is exactly what it's doing. And any solicitor that looks at that and thinks that you would present any sort of legal argument one way or the other based on an academic paper is ludicrous. Like, you wouldn't even present a legal argument based on an academic paper. It's ridiculous that you think that you're going to be able to draw any conclusions from an academic paper. And it takes a lot more consideration than reading his paper, going to the Act and doing whatever else they've done. To be able to come out and say definitively, like they have, he's going to lose based on this, it takes a lot more consideration than that. And at the end of the day, it's an academic paper. And that's really what it's for, to argue both sides of the coin, really.
I suppose the other thing to consider is it might be the case that I'm actually a ball earther, trolling the flat earthers and arguing that this would never make it through court ever. It just depends on how you interpret what's being said and how you think what is. It's open to you to read and understand, isn't it?
I'll just give an example of the kind of person. We went to Liverpool and those two people you were talking to. So are you saying someone like her would read your paper and
no, it would be legal. It would be people in the legal industry that would initially read it. For me, academics, people researching political indoctrination from the context of evolution over creation, perhaps, or whatever. But if somebody like Jeremy took a real big issue with it and he started writing to government and parliament and all that, that's really only going to benefit because it raises the awareness to the topic at hand. So basically, the more stink that's created, Spurs, the better. What they'd be better off doing.
I think this is where the confusion.
I think you need to.
I get what you say, but
clarify.
Again,
it's not a scientific paper. It's not a scientific paper. It's a
legal
legal argument.
Just one at a time. Go ahead, Trish.
Sorry. I just want to be clear. I think this is where the confusion's getting in. It's not a scientific paper.
And it's not trying to be a scientific
paper. It is a legal argument.
Yeah.
For a legal academic argument. It's not a scientific paper. It's not going to be peer-reviewed and put into a scientific magazine. It's a legal argument.
It's not trying to be a scientific argument. It's trying to be a legal argument that makes people just ask the question, I didn't know this provision was here. Maybe it could apply in other areas. Because there are always political issues that come up from time to time. It might be gender neutrality next week or whatever. And all I'm saying is it's written in the context of academics, not in the context of ball earther trolls or ball earthers or flat earther trolls. It's written in the context of, there is this piece of legislation and it might apply, discuss. And that's what's happening.
I mean, I'm not confused with this question. I mean, again, I think people, because they want to. Well, you've just said. You say I'm not confused now. Just people were not sure. Was it to when you say academics? Do you mean people who go to university or legalese like lawyers and solicitors and things like that? But yeah, so you've just said it's for the legalese people to have a look and then pass it on.
It's for a master's degree, specifically in law. So it's a degree above your LLB, and so it's technically a law paper. It's got nothing to do with scientific education at all.
That's why
it's not a scientific paper.
That's why I don't really need to worry about what people like Jem Panda say, because they're going to be arguing that Anthony's done it. None of them matter. Not to me, anyway. They might. It's nice that they're interested. Right. But the bigger picture is that this is about presenting two sides to the arguments and seeing what happens. And from my point of view, it's literally to point out both sides and say it's for the court to decide, which is usually the conclusion in most people's papers, because they find something interesting they want to talk about and they go, I wonder what would happen if that went to court. And then they leave it at that point. And that's why it's academically meritorious to do something on this topic. They'll probably fail it because they'll see it as conspiratorial. I'm sure they'll fail it for some reason. And then I'll have to resubmit it for some reason and get it sorted. But it doesn't change the fact that there is a discussion to have. And you can form your view on it.
What give us the outcome. What you've done a paper, the outcome you expect for, and how long? Give us a time period.
In a professional context.
Give us a
Do
time,
you
a
remember
year, 2 years,
original
before your
objective?
paper.
The original objective was to basically to get flat Earth into to try and help flat Earth not be dismissed and dismissed and discussed with ridicule and scorn, because it is seen as a stupid discussion that people just dismiss flippantly. But the reality is there are legitimate points there that we need to have science prove that there are, like gas pressure without a container. How do you do that? We know that you can't do that, but they'll just gloss over that. Well, I don't agree that they should be able to gloss over that and just pretend as though it's not an issue. They haven't got any science to demonstrate it. And it's like, well, maybe I could do something to raise this issue, to make somebody that reads the paper wonder, and even if just one person just takes that paper and goes, do you know what? There's something in this. Then it's achieved its goal, and it's to basically encourage thinking on a critical path to what we're actually being told is the world in which we live. And there is a legitimate debate point there that, yeah, Jeremy might disagree with. I don't care. Jeremy's views are irrelevant. He's got a view. Great. I'm happy for him. It doesn't change the fact that there's a debate point there that is legit.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to join the community debate, then go to nathanoakley.com and check out the Flat Earth Debate forum, which you should definitely all join. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion right here, right now, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now, we are joined by Trish and Sleeping Warrior, along with 10th Man and Flatzoid. How you all doing?
Very well.
Yo, yo.
Hello, hello. A bit quiet, Anthony. Have you dropped from Skype now? Maybe not. We're also joined by a whole bunch of people in Discord. How are you all doing in Discord?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Hello, hello, hello. Any signs of Earth curvature?
Not from Florida.
Any more for any more? Earth curve, main focus of the show. People think they live on a sphere. Earth curve, anybody? Okay. Any signs of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Absolutely not.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Gravity is not a force, but it's also a force.
Not a force.
Forget George Musa saying that gravity is not a force, but you can think of it as a force. There's another PhD guy that's more recent, or certainly PhD level anyway, maybe not more recent, but he says that gravity doesn't exist, and we've known for some time that it doesn't exist. It's time that we yell it from the rooftops, or words to that effect.
Any evidence?
Can't even define it, let alone prove it.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
No evidence for that, Nathan.
No.
Nothing.
Any evidence for the distance to the sun?
No.
No.
Apparent distance.
Apparent, yeah, not actual. No. Any evidence the actual distance to the sun? No? Any evidence that you can
Nope.
have gas pressure without the necessary
No.
antecedent of a container while I get rumpused?
No evidence for gas pressure without a container.
No, no, no.
The antecedent.
There's
No.
no evidence a container around the Earth, and we have gas pressure.
Do you know what the word antecedent means? Take time.
Who?
What's that?
Do you know what the word antecedent means?
I do, and that's a claim that hasn't been proven.
Sorry, you think the necessary antecedent isn't proven by tens of millions of demonstrations of gas pressure being maintained by way of container? You think that's not proven?
Well,
No, I think you'll find
well,
it's
I mean,
it's the inverse.
by your own admission, in the same way that tens of millions of things falling down and the vector of down isn't proof of gravity.
Can you speak
By
up
your
a
own
bit?
standards, no.
I didn't hear the beginning of that. Say that again.
Sleep.
I said, even by your own standards of tens of millions of things falling down and there being a vector of down and accelerating down, no.
Like what? Tens of millions of what? What's falling down? I'm sitting here, nothing's falling down. What are you talking about?
Yeah, you drop something, it accelerates.
Sorry,
20 meters per
you
second.
drop something is you dropping something now, isn't it? You asserted that things are falling down. There's tens of millions of them. Now you're picking something up and dropping it. No. Tens of million things aren't being dropped by you simultaneously when you pick them up and drop them. What the hell are you on about? No, that's you picking something up.
What I'm trying to say is that you guys are introducing a claim that there is a container in the gas pressure that we experience. That's not been proven. There's no evidence for it.
Yeah, it has, by the thousands of demonstrations of containers. To quote Conspiracy Cats, who's a school teacher, without the container, there can be no pressure. Now, that's a fact. It's an antecedent-consequent relationship. The necessary antecedent to have gas pressure is something to press upon. That's not proven. That's a fact.
No, that's not proven.
Oh, really?
Given-
Well, maybe you can demonstrate gas pressure without a container. Go.
And I'm saying outside. We walk outside.
Not your fundy fucking belief in what the sky is. A demonstration.
Don't rumpus me, Nathan.
I want a demonstration beyond your religious fundamentalist assertion having walked outside and pointed at the sky. Yeah? So you're going to say the sky, the thing that we can't prove has a container, doesn't have a container because you believe, having pointed at it, that it doesn't have a container, despite the fact that the antecedent to have pressure is a container. You think your fundy belief is going to trump that?
No, what I'm saying is that there is no evidence of a container.
It's the necessary antecedent. How many times have I got to say it? Without the container, there can be no pressure.
That, according to Nathan,
According to Conspiracy Cats. I quoted him by name. Not according to Nathan, according to a teacher called Conspiracy Cats. Quote, without the container, there can be no pressure. End quote. He also qualified it in 2018. Without the balloon, there is no pressure. End quote. So no, not according to Nathan. According to one of the fundies on your side who teaches this subject. It's a necessary antecedent, and your fundy belief in what the sky does definitely doesn't defy the necessary antecedent to have gas pressure, you bloody fundy. Show me gas pressure without a container. Hello? Show me gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container. That's the housekeeping question. We've got to the point where you've pointed at your fundy belief.
Nathan, it's clear that he's being, he's doing something else in the background. He's either someone's talking to him in the background or otherwise. So let's just keep the pregnant pause and make it look like they were just dickheads, because that is what's happening.
Yeah, Anthony, maybe you can tell him what his own scientists say about gravity.
I can get it on screen if you want, Nathan.
Sure.
Bear with me. Screen share.
Not addressed anything I've said. He says, according to Nathan. No, not according to Nathan. According to Conspiracy Cats, quote, without the container there can be no pressure. Pressure being pressing on what? The surface area. That's how you'll measure it. Per unit area. That's what you'll be measuring it. Area of what? The container. That's what. So, we are absolutely in no doubt that without the container there can be no pressure. It's part of the maths. The area of the container the gas is going to press upon. Yeah? Boyle's law also giving you an area that the gas will be in. The second law of thermodynamics dictating that the gas will fill that available area. All of these things are describing the area of a container. So your fundy belief, dipshit, isn't going to trump that. These are facts. So what have you got to say? What, that's my definition of it when it isn't? Is that your rebuttal? Well, according to Nathan, when it's not, it's according to a teacher called Conspiracy Cats.
He's run away.
Of course he has. Go on, you're on screen. Go ahead, Anthony.
This is an article from a guy called Dennis Overby, but it's relating to a bloke called I can't remember what his bloody name is now. Verlinder, Dr. Verlinder. For him, gravity does not exist, said Dr. Verlinder. He goes on and on. This is a really long article, but he describes. I mean, he's a real person. He's out in the public. His specialism is in string theory, but in the context of gravity, he knows gravity does not exist. And right at the very end of the document, he concludes by saying, "We've known for a long time that gravity does not exist. It's time to yell it." So not only is gravity not a force, but you can think of it as a force. It doesn't even exist, and they've known about it for a long time. So all you fundies that are claiming that gravity is a force, still, I just can't even have a conversation with anybody that argues that gravity is a force anymore. Even when they say it manifests itself as a force, I still can't have a conversation with you because it doesn't even exist. It's literally everywhere. Just do a cursory search on Google for is gravity a force? It's written everywhere. It's not a force. It doesn't even exist. So
he hold on, put it back up. Hold on.
And this is from their side.
Just pop it back up, Sleeping Warrior.
Oh shit! Do you know I was just about to? Yeah, hang on. There we go.
He recalled that someone told him the other day that the unfolding story of gravity was like the Emperor's new clothes. Well, not really there. That was all. Sorry, Flatsword. Go ahead.
I'm just saying, and this is from their side of the argument, their scientists saying this. Straight in their face.
Yeah, it's literally, we've known for a long time that gravity does not exist. It's time to yell it. Well, we're yelling it, and we have been for a while, and we're asking, I mean, I don't know why, honest to God, ballers, if you don't accept that gravity is not even a force, then there's no conversation to have with you, because you're literally ignoring your current science. You're going back to a science that happened in the First World War. Well, current science isn't saying that anymore, guys, and it's not just one document; it's everywhere. So let's at least get up to speed with the current definition of what gravity is, because it's definitely not a force.
Hey, Anthony, I went and checked this guy out and watched a full hour lecture from him. Righteous, I've got 3 slides on Masterby. If you could post it so that Nathan could show it. It's very interesting what he does in this lecture. It pertains to our last caller. I don't know why he does it this way, but he did, and I caught it.
All right, give me a sec.
I'm pretty sure that Michelle Cavendish gravity
was Riley,
already...
if you would...
Go ahead, Blacksword.
Sorry, if Riley went on there, what you saw on that paper, the regions of gravity on there. If you read that, it sees actually putting the effects of gravity on the thermodynamics and entropy.
Yeah,
You have to
So, in
speak up
other
a
words,
little bit. You're a bit quiet.
It's all dead.
There we go. Nathan, if you could show that screen.
Yeah, you're on.
All right. So this was a screenshot I saw, the one that everyone sees right now. We've known for a long time gravity doesn't exist. It's time to yell it. Dr. Eric Verlind, physics professor and string theorist, Amsterdam University. So I decided I'm going to go listen to one of his lectures. Go to the next slide, Righteous, please. And in this next lecture, this was one of his slides. And he's talking about entropy and bits. And look what it says, gas molecule, and it's got a container. I'm saying, well, why is he showing that if he's talking about outer space where it's a vacuum? Why has he got a container trying to, why not just have the gas molecules with just black? Go to the next slide. And then he goes, entropy equals measures the amount of inaccessible information. I mean, this guy's really way out there, but guess what? He has to use a container to show how way out there he is. Found it pretty funny.
This is why in Bullbusters on Saturday, John was trying to highlight that you can't throw science under the bus. Science is a method of establishing cause and effect. So science in this regard has got absolutely nothing to worry about. And, you know, whether or not people believe in the heliocentric model or not, when it comes to actual physics, they're just going to talk about it how it is. And if it's backed by experimental validation, then that's going to be empirical. They're not going to have anything to worry about. The only people who've got stuff to worry about in this regards are the pseudoscientists who are basically promoting a religion. They're the people who've got to be concerned because they're just so stories are going to fall apart. Gravity's just one of them, and it's falling apart at the seams.
Yeah, never once did he cite the scientific method, offer actual evidence for the process that he took. It was just his thinking, and let's just go out here and think this way now. It's like that's pseudoscience. You're not at all being honest.
Any evidence of the R value?
No.
No.
Only. Do you know what? It dawned on me last night, right? I was watching one of the hangouts from maybe a week ago when we first started talking about Coriolis. And I said to Nathan at the time, I said, like, they're only doing this because they can obfuscate the point that much that everybody ends up confused. They've got to argue Coriolis to obfuscate the point. The point's simple. If Earth's not turning, there is no Coriolis, right? But they want to argue that there's Coriolis. So they will argue it just to create the impression that something exists when it doesn't. Because there is no apparent deflection. We all know that. And if there is any deflection and it infers that it might be potentially down to the rotation of the Earth, well, they can't prove that it is because there are other factors that influence the trajectory of a bullet, like pressure variations, a bit of humidity, a little bit of wind across the path. There's a variety of things. You only need it doesn't matter. There's numerous things that can cause a bullet to change its course. And it doesn't mean it's the curvature, the rotation of the Earth, because obviously you can't manipulate it to prove that it is. But they've got to argue it anyway. And it seems to be, when you say any evidence of R, the only time that R comes up is in curvature calcs when you use the curve calcs. So if you beg the question and you argue curve calcs, then R comes into it. It's the same with Earth turn. The only time that there's any evidence of Earth turn is when they beg the question in demanding that Coriolis is a thing or not. Well, it doesn't apply unless there's actually an Earth turn. Let's establish that the Earth's turning before we start arguing how much of it is causing bullets to deflect. Oh, what do you mean bullets don't deflect? Then there is no curvature, is there? There is no Earth turn, is there?
Well, so to put it more succinctly, right? So you're saying it doesn't need R, it's assuming Earth rotation and Coriolis. Well, no, it does need R. So the way they're arguing it is saying everything takes place on a non-inertial spinning reference frame. Well, what that actually means when you boil it down is, I demand we start this argument with us begging the question of the Earth spinning. So all of my examples and all of my arguments and whether or not they happen or don't happen are going to start with the premise that we're on a non-inertial spinning reference frame. Zanuck said it 1,000 times. All they're doing is begging the question. They're saying Earth is a ball that spins. Now let's argue about what we see. And we can argue all day long about it. Doesn't matter whether I win, lose or draw in the argument, because every single premise for this argument of Coriolis will start with us being on a ball that spins with an R value, with all the latitude lines on it, right? Yeah. So they're immediately begging the question of a spinning ball Earth when they say, right, no, it's all taking place on a non-inertial spinning reference frame. So we're automatically begging the question that the Earth spins. So the way you asked the other day, how do you undo this argument succinctly? And at the time I hadn't given it so much thought as to round it out as quickly as I'm going to do now. All you do is say, you're begging the question. We're not going to start this argument with you assuming your outcome that the Earth is a spinning ball, and therefore this effect does, or does not, as the case is with Coriolis, happen. No. You're going to start by proving that it spins. Not assuming it spins and then describing what may or may not happen based on your presupposition that we're on a spinning ball, a non-inertial turning reference frame. No. So from now on, whenever this subject comes up, the argument won't start with them detailing what happens in terms of Coriolis, because they're actually arguing for a spinning ball Earth that they'll presuppose. They're just begging the question. It's always that way. It just takes us a little time to figure out why they're doing what they're doing. Why do they always start the argument only talking from the position of the voyeuristic, I'm standing on a non-inertial spinning reference frame watching you? Well, it's not so much to do with the watching, it's more to do with the begging the question. If I can start this argument with the presupposition that we're on a non-inertial spinning reference frame, like the roundabout, it doesn't matter if I argue about whether or not we do see deviation, because it's all one reference frame, it's all a non-inertial spinning reference frame, or I argue that we do see deviation because we've got two separate reference frames in the form of the gyroscope or the bullet that I'm going to use most often than not. Because it doesn't matter which argument gets won or lost, the premise was always the same. We've begged the question, we've started the argument on the spinning ball Earth. We're all on a non-inertial spinning reference frame, says Zanuck. It's always a non-inertial spinning reference frame. Everything's taking place in the non-inertial spinning reference frame. Well, that means he's just begging the question. He's saying it must be a spinning Earth. That's how we're going to start this argument from now on. And I'm just going to say from now on, that's begging the question. No, you're here to prove that the Earth's spinning, not start with the supposition that it's spinning, and then prove it with that supposition in mind. Absolutely not. First, prove it spins. And it was you saying this, Anthony, that made me realise it. You're like, no, that's just begging the question. I'm like, yeah, but it is, but they're arguing about how we see the non-inertial reference frame of... It's like, why am I doing this? They're just demanding that we beg the question of a spinning ball Earth right at the beginning of the argument. Why didn't I spot this sooner? You spotted it, Anthony. I'm like, yeah, but we need to explain how the non-inertial reference frame spinning underneath the pendulum would be defied by the plane that would take an hour and a half from Charlotte to LA. No, just say you're begging the question. Don't start by telling us that we're on a spinning ball Earth. Prove your premise. Don't start with your premise and go from there. That's begging the question, assuming your outcome. So let's start by being on a non-inertial spinning reference frame, a spinning ball Earth. That's the very thing they're trying to prove. So you don't start with your premise. That's begging the question. So I just won't allow that from now on. What's that you want to talk about Coriolis? Coriolis' effect that happens on a roundabout. What's that got to do with Earth? Well, let's just say we're on a non-inertial spinning reference frame. No, because that's begging the question.
Saying let's just say, Nathan, is exactly how we move from a hypothesis to from an observation to a potential hypothesis.
Oh, right.
I don't know why you're taking
That's
issue
fascinating. So you're
with
saying
that.
this is science then? Excellent. So what's the observed phenomenon
No.
in this instance? Yeah, you just made a load of scientific words. You used the word hypothesis, and now you're going to say no. I'd like to know what the observed phenomena is, first of all, if this is science. If it's not science, then why have you used the word hypothesis?
Because you can use the word hypothesis. What do you mean, why have I used the word hypothesis?
What, you mean like a mystic meg prediction? Is it a scientific prediction with an empirical outcome, or a mystic meg bullshit prediction that you'll make that has absolutely no empiricism attached to it whatsoever? Which one is it? Empirical?
No, but
scientific?
you're using the idea of begging the question completely incorrectly.
Assuming your outcome, if you're trying to prove the Earth spins, starting with the premise that we're on a non-inertial spinning reference frame is absolutely, unequivocally begging the question. I don't misunderstand
It
this
is not
fallacy.
begging the question.
Yeah, it is. If the question is whether or not Earth spins, and you start with the premise that Earth spins, that is begging the question, you stupid Dumbo.
Okay, Nathan, begging the question means...
Is assuming your outcome, assuming the thing that you are trying to prove is in effect at the start of your argument. So if you are trying to prove the Earth spins, stating that we are on a non-inertial spinning reference frame, i.e. a spinning ball Earth, is assuming your outcome, assuming the thing you are trying to prove. Therefore begging the question, you stupid dick.
You're not trying to prove...
What, that we're spinning? Yeah, you stupid globy fuckwit. That's precisely what you're trying to prove with Coriolis.
No, Nathan, you're assigning that attempt of proof to what the argument actually is, or the exploration of the idea of Coriolis, or the exploration of...
Coriolis has got sod all to do with globe Earth. It's just an effect you can see on a roundabout. So how has this got anything to do with globe Earth? We're not arguing about Coriolis. That's nonsense. We're arguing about whether or not Earth spins.
Yeah, particularly with the idea of a roundabout, because guess what?
No! Are you deaf? We are not talking about Coriolis and a roundabout. We are talking about whether or not Earth spins. You little ham-handed segue away from what you're actually trying to prove when you claim that you're not begging the question, when you automatically assume Earth spins, because actually we're arguing about Coriolis effect. We're not arguing about Coriolis effect. We are arguing about whether or not Earth spins. And a presupposition that it spins would be a begging the question fallacy, now wouldn't it, dick brain?
Interestingly enough, not, because it's just simply an assumption that you make, and is
An assumption of the outcome you're trying to prove! An assumption of the outcome you are trying to prove. By definition, assuming your outcome. Ergo, begging the question.
assuming an outcome and
Is begging the question! That's what assuming the outcome is. If you're going to tell me now that you assume your outcome in a scientific hypothesis, which is where we got to a couple of minutes ago, I'm going to need a phenomena that we're observing. Don't rumpus me while I demolish your utter horseshit, your begging the question justification. Don't rumpus me, you little shit.
Nathan, I know you're angry.
Is this assumption that you're going to detail now going to form part of a hypothesis?
Nathan, the idea of a hypothesis.
So it is. I'm way ahead of you then. So that would be a yes, Nathan. You're all over this like flies on shit. Yeah, I know. You're going to now equivocate this with a scientific hypothesis. We've already got here once. And I asked what was your phenomena, and then you said you weren't using a scientific hypothesis, you were using a colloquial hypothesis. So I don't give two fucks what you think the scientific hypothesis is going to be in this instance, because you're talking colloquially now, aren't you?
Colloquial.
You're talking colloquially, because we're not going to get to the phenomena you observed, because you say no when I ask.
It didn't work with hypothesis or scientific, so now you have to go to colloquial. Interesting.
I think you're forgetting to mention though that
it's great theory.
Anecdotal evidence actually still is evidence, right?
Not scientific evidence, no. Not with any empiricism, no. Not with any validity that you could assert with certitude, no.
But I saw Loch Ness Monster. I went on holidays to Scotland and I saw it. I was in a boat. I saw him.
I don't care. It's not scientific evidence, and this dick is talking about hypotheses, now isn't he? So if he's contextualizing, don't rumpus me while I pull apart your crappy little argument again. If he's going to argue that this prediction, a hypothesis, a scientific prediction is actually just a colloquial little guess, a Mystic Meg prediction, then I don't give two craps, because we're looking for empiricism in this regard. But we're not getting empiricism. We're getting the fundies who come here assuming automatically that we're on a non-inertial spinning reference frame, that they will scream at us till they're blue in the face that we accept that premise of the outcome they're trying to prove, i.e. begging the question. But this dick's going to say no. When you formulate a hypothesis, you start with a presumed outcome, and then it goes forward to be validated. But you've got to start with a phenomenon that he's not going to give me. He's going to say, no, I'm talking colloquially.
Nathan, you can make assumptions when you're formulating hypotheses.
I know, I've already summarised this, so this is a scientific prediction then.
Nathan, I didn't say that, but
You've just told me that in a scientific prediction, you formulate a hypothesis and you have assumptions in that. But you're not talking about science. You are, as I rightly pointed out only moments ago, equivocating between scientific validity and Mystic Meg predictions.
I'm trying to point out the fact that you don't know the difference between
Yeah, what? You don't even know what you're going to summarise what I don't know? Yeah, I do know. It seems so often that the natural defence of the Glober is to automatically tell the audience that their opponent doesn't understand. In this case, the fuckwit doing it is so stupid he can't even summarise what he thinks I don't understand while he's saying it.
Nathan, you are mixing up the idea.
Yeah. I just summarised that the fuckwit approach here is to say I don't understand something. I do understand. You're equivocating between a scientific prediction, in other words, a hypothesis, a scientific prediction, versus a Mystic Meg prediction. What you call a hypothesis. Because if we're talking science, I'm going to want a natural phenomena. And when I asked, you went, no, I'm talking colloquially. So who cares about whether or not in scientific predictions you make assumptions? Because those assumptions will go forth for validation if it's scientific. And if it's not, I don't care about your Mystic Meg prediction.
And you just proved my point.
No, I didn't. I didn't prove anything that you've had to say here. All you've done is try to justify all the other fundies who come here and demand that we automatically assume the Earth is spinning. Something that I've concisely pointed out is a begging the question fallacy, assuming the outcome you are trying to prove. And you've said, no, when you formulate a hypothesis, part of the hypothesis is an assumption. Yeah, well, what about the other half of the hypothesis? Would that be the contrapositive of your assumption, the complete polar opposition, saying that what you assumed in the alternative is absolutely incorrect in the null? Because you don't seem to be mentioning that part of the scientific prediction. When I ask you about anything to do with the scientific prediction, you say you're not talking about science.
That you just proved what I'm trying to point out.
Yeah, that's the same shit rebuttal as last time. I've just proved your point, have I? Yet your point is that begging the question and making an assumption is actually part of a hypothesis, which by your standard is actually a colloquial hypothesis, not a scientific hypothesis, that would have a valid prediction, which would have a hypothesis, and a null that said that what you presume is the cause isn't actually causing the effect. That's scientific, but I've said this 3 times when it comes to me asking you for the first step of the scientific method that would be formulated into a scientific prediction, otherwise known as a hypothesis. We'd have both sides, null and alternative, not just your assumption, not just Mystic Meg predictions. But again, I'll ask you for the first steps and you'll tell me you're not talking about science, or that I've proven your point.
I am saying that you are confounding the idea of an assumption made during a hypothesis versus assuming the outcome.
No, I'm not. Assuming the outcome isn't anything to do with a hypothesis when you're begging the question. If your outcome in an argument is that Earth is spinning, and you start with the premise that we're on a quote, non-inertial spinning reference frame, all that's saying is I automatically assume Earth is spinning in this example. That's begging the question. A hypothesis has an assumption also. It assumes the cause of an effect. The thing about science is it actually goes forth to put it into an experiment and validate, or, the null hypothesis, invalidate what you assume causes the effect. That's what gives you the empiricism. So I would put you to task at this stage to give me the scientific null that you've got for your presumed cause that the Earth is spinning. And the way you'd validate or invalidate that null is to vary it. So if your assumption in a scientific hypothesis is that Earth spins, because that's not a begging the question fallacy, it's actually a variable I can manipulate. I'd ask you how the hell you're going to manipulate Earth turning, and the answer is I can't, making it also an invalid scientific hypothesis. But you're not talking about science, you're talking colloquially, Mystic Meg predictions that are definitely not suddenly valid because you've said they're a hypothesis in colloquial terms. Tell me
Nathan,
I don't understand.
seems
like I don't understand. Go on, how predictable are you going to be? Maybe you tell me I've made your point. Maybe that'll be an excellent rebuttal. You've just made my point, Nathan.
Yeah. You did.
Wow,
Okay,
you
can I
are
ask-
so
Can
predictable.
I ask
By
why would
talking
you
about a
only be
by talking
speaking
about
about?
assumption in the middle of a hypothesis.
So we are doing a scientific prediction here.
Ethan, you just laid out exactly why you can make assumptions in the
RC
middle of
Meisty,
hypotheses.
why
Good job.
would you only be speaking about a hypothesis colloquially? Why wouldn't we be talking about
nobody,
science? I mean,
Nathan, that's
isn't that the
Nathan's
point
language. I
of
didn't
this
say
conversation?
What he's doing is he's rumpusing you. While you try and put a concise question to him, he'll talk through every word you say, Chocolate, because the words we have to say are pertinent, poignant, and devastating to his argument. So it's probably best that he talks through every word you say and your question isn't heard concisely, because that's possibly going to give him a chance of ignoring what you say. So I'll ask him kindly, please don't interrupt Chocolate. Thank you.
I'm just curious as to why you would
He lasted
not
2
speak
seconds.
about a hypothesis.
Chocolate, hold on. He lasted
scientifically.
Chocolate. He lasted 2 seconds. The moment you started talking, he started talking. Because as I say, their only defence at this point is to attempt to stop these arguments, the ones that they need to go away and ask on physics forums for the answers, those pertinent questions that trouble them greatly, that they have to go away and spend hours, days, weeks and years researching to not come up with answers for. Their only defence is to try and attempt to stop those questions reaching an audience, which is what RC's doing now. So I ask him kindly to shut his mouth, and instantly the moment you start talking, he tries to stop the devastating question being put to him. I'll try again a bit less politely. Shut your mouth, you stupid fundy globehead.
Are you?
So what? He managed again 2 seconds.
Are you feeling?
I'm asking you to shut up so Chocolate can put a question to you. You just can't manage it.
RC Meisty, can you hear me? Well, if you can hear me, I'm very curious as to why you would come in here and not speak about a hypothesis in a scientific manner. Why would you only be speaking about a hypothesis colloquially? Especially
I
since
never
we're
said
in
that I was speaking about a hypothesis.
Really?
Liar. Now
So
he's saying
what
he's
did
not
you
used
say
the word
then?
hypothesis, which he absolutely has on multiple occasions. Now he's saying he's not talking about a
Nathan
hypothesis.
said,
and now he's interrupting me, pointing out that he's a liar, because the obfuscation is the only tactic. Yes, you have contextualized this as a hypothesis. Yes, you use that word. No, you haven't not used it. You are a liar.
I didn't use the word colloquial hypothesis. You used that, not me.
But is
sorry.
hypothesis not a scientific anyway?
Oh, so we are talking scientifically then. I've asked that 3 times. So this is a
I
scientifically...
also
I am not asking you to start interrupting me again as soon as I do clarify what I am asking for. RC, you fundy prick. I will ask my question unimpeded, fundy. So,
Are you angry?
given the... That was 2 seconds. Yeah, you're not going to obfuscate this point, you little bastard. I'm going to ask it concisely and you're going to damn well listen to me. If you talk while I talk, it just demonstrates you can't cope with my troubling questions.
This is so funny.
Shut up, whoever that was. Don't need to know how you find this amusing. I want to know, given that this has not been defined by you as colloquial definitions being given to the word hypothesis, I am asking you specifically if we are contextualizing it scientifically then.
What's your question?
Was that RC Meisty asking that?
Yeah, what's your question?
Is this contextualized scientifically then? Question mark. Over.
I simply said the word hypothesis.
So is that scientific then?
Nathan, if you want to scream about science...
Yeah! I'll ask you for the 5th, 20th and 40 millionth time while you completely ignore the question. So, given that you have used the word hypothesis, are you contextualizing this in science or not?
I'm not using your pigeonhole definitions. I said the word hypothesis. Take it as you will.
I'm asking you. I'm not going to take it as I will. I'm asking you. Is your use of the word hypothesis contextualized accurately in science or not?
What's your definition of science?
Your definition! Your use of the word!
Oh, my use of the word?
Yeah! What kind of a dumb fuck are you?
My use of the word is when you make an educated guess based on your observations.
Is that scientific? So not scientific then?
I'll let you do the description there. Nick.
Yeah, well, that is not scientifically being contextualized then. So this is a Mystic Meg hypothesis. No empiricism being offered whatsoever when we actually beg the question and make an assumption that Earth is spinning. This is not going to be taken forth and given scientific empiricism. It's just a Mystic Meg guess. A colloquial hypothesis where he makes an assumption and says it's fine to do so because he's got a colloquial hypothesis. Because no, I will define it. This is not scientific. So who cares about your crap Mystic Meg hypothesis? It's not got any empiricism. So, yeah, who cares? Just begging the question, assuming your outcome, assuming Earth spins when that's precisely the thing you're trying to prove. How do my balls taste, Fundy?
I mean, unless, of course, he's planning on validating that hypothesis and hasn't told us that part yet. I mean, that's
No,
possible,
he's made it
right?
clear. This is not scientific. Just a little guess based on an
are we just
observation.
making magical hypotheses and not going to validate, or are we just going to leave it at that?
No, it's acceptable in his version of a hypothesis to make a little assumption. The fact that in a scientific hypothesis that assumption would be tested is irrelevant for him because this isn't scientific. It's a Mystic Meg prediction. It's not going to be given any empiricism whatsoever. But according to him, that's the justification, because in a equivocation between the colloquial hypothesis and a justifiable reason to have an assumption, that would be in a scientific hypothesis, i.e. it's going to be validated or invalidated by way of experimentation, but that's not what he's got. He's got a ham-handed shit equivocation between a colloquial hypothesis and a scientific hypothesis to justify a begging the question fallacy when they argue Coriolis. That's what he's got. I would imagine that the next thing out of his mouth will be to tell me that I don't understand something.
You guys have weird versions of science. I mean, this guy says hypothesis, I'll just assume. And then, what was it, Dawn yesterday with science is just making a little observation and writing it down. And there
That's
you
what
go.
this guy said. This guy said it worse, not just making an observation and writing down what happens. He's saying, I make an assumption of what the world is and then go from there. But that's okay because it's a Mystic Meg hypothesis with no empiricism. Not science. But I'll say that a scientific prediction has got a little guess in it, in the hypothesis? Yeah, it's called an equivocation fallacy. Just a crappy little fallacy, like all of them. He thought it'd slip it past his little equivocation between these two different meanings of the word hypothesis. Yeah, but his equivocation fallacy didn't slip by me. This dumb fuck didn't win. Too smart for you, shit for brains. Didn't slip past with your little equivocation. The long silence when I asked him whether or not this was science was because it absolutely isn't, but his justification for the presupposition was that in a hypothesis, it's got an assumption. That was his equivocation.
Wouldn't there have to be an observed phenomenon? And what would that be? Like, I'm standing still, I'm sitting still, so what would be the observed phenomenon?
According to the globe rhetoric, the phenomena would be the apparent deviation of any projectile in its inertial reference frame when it leaves the claim to be, this is the begging the question part, claim to be spinning non-inertial reference frame of the globe Earth. When something leaves the claim to be spinning non-inertial reference frame that they beg the question, immediately assume is the case, they claim there's a deviation. Well, there isn't. Planes don't deviate. Balls don't deviate, drones don't deviate, hang gliders don't deviate, nothing deviates. But the phenomena they claim in the first instance, in order to beg the question, and just automatically assert that Earth is spinning, is that there is a deviation as demonstrated by Coriolis effect. Now when you get into the nitty-gritty of this, you'll end up arguing about the effects of Coriolis, which is precisely what they want. So long as the argument started with you assuming that the premise we are talking about here is a spinning reference frame, analogous with Earth, which is absolutely what they're assuming, is the case in all arguments for Coriolis effect. Just like this funding RC guy, who just said, no, it's okay to have an assumption, because that's what they do in a hypothesis. Yeah, the alternative, 50% of the hypothesis, not in the null. Yeah, the null would say that your assumption's wrong. He just doesn't mention that, and when asked if it's science, he says, no, it's colloquial. A little equivocation fallacy that didn't get past us. The point of the fallacy is that he's justifying the assumption they make, and the assumption in this instance is Earth spinning. It's always going to be a non-inertial spinning reference frame. We're always going to beg the question. It's okay to assume our outcome, because a hypothesis has an assumption in it. That's what his justification was. Crappiest argument ever. These fundies need to up their game. They're getting slaughtered here daily.
So what is the hypothesis, Nathan?
A hypothesis is a scientific prediction. It predicts the cause of an effect.
So it's an educated guess.
Let me say it simply if I can.
Sorry.
Can I say it simply?
An educated
There is
guess.
no...
No.
Oops. Oh, I'm sorry.
So a hypothesis is not an educated guess.
No. Your independent variable would be an educated guess. Did you hear me?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, the independent variable, the thing that RC Meister, that'd be me talking. Yeah, the one who's destroying your religion of a globe was talking. So you better shut up, fundies. It's time for another ass beating. Yeah, in RC's little equivocation, he's justifying the presupposition of an Earth that spins based on that particular part of a hypothesis. So your educated guess is the premise of all arguments for Coriolis. That educated guess that is yet to be verified is the justification that R.C. Meister has got for automatically assuming Earth is turning. Something that in a scientific hypothesis, which R.C. Meister didn't have, would go forth to be verified. And do you know how they'd verify that educated guess, my friend? They'd vary and manipulate it. So I'd like to know how anybody who thinks that they're going to scientifically validate Earth turning is going to vary and manipulate that little assumption, this independent variable. The assumption that Earth is turning. Because I'd like to see one of you vary and manipulate that little independent variable now. On you go, Fundy. How are you going to vary that little assumption that you're making? Tell me that.
I mean, I see
Hold on,
this
Chocolate.
almost like
Hold on.
gas pressure.
Hold on.
Like,
Chocolate. I want someone to tell me how this little assumption, this independent variable of Earth turn, is going to be varied. Because this is what we're talking about. This assumption is the independent variable in a hypothesis, meaning it must be varied. So I want a stony silence from the morons who think they live on a sphere while they think for a moment about how they're going to vary Earth turning. That presupposition. In other words, the standpoint that they will assume that's the case in their arguments. Not vary it and validate it. So how are you going to vary this little assumption, fundies?
Right, so in your experiment, you're automatically assuming that the Earth is flat and stationary.
It's not an assumption.
But in our experiments, we can't assume that...
Oh, what a wanker. So what, change the subject time? Yeah, it's not change the subject time to something that you're going to now claim I've been claiming this entire argument. We are absolutely talking about Earth turning. Not about my claim Earth's flat. That's not what's on the table or being argued about. That would be called a red herring. That's also a fallacious argument, my friend. So let's not red herring me here with a different argument that we're not talking about. We're talking about you with an assumption that Earth turns and its description within a hypothesis. With an assumption that it doesn't. Shut up! Just because I'm destroying your religion doesn't mean you talk through the demolition of your religion. We are talking about your fundy assumption that Earth is turning. Now, in the context of a hypothesis, that would be called an independent variable. And I want to know how you, the religious fucktard, varies your presumption that Earth turns. Vary your presumption that Earth turns.
Mute your watch face. Okay.
Steering mumbling. What a shock.
So would you say a hypothesis? Do you say a hypothesis has to have a DV and an IV?
I don't care. At this stage, we're talking about an independent variable. The presumption they're justifying in this regard with Earth turn. They're saying it's okay to justify Earth turn as a presuppositional argument because in a hypothesis, you've got a presumption. Okay, that presumption in a hypothesis is the independent variable. Variable. The thing that you presume causes an effect. Well, if they're going to presume that Earth turn is a justifiable variable, they're going to talk through me saying this because it rapes their religion. So I'll say it again, stick these bastards all on mute while I summarise that their assumption is being equivocated with the hypotheses. And that assumption in a hypothesis is an independent variable. So your assumption, to have it validated, would need to be varied. Now, I'm asking for the third time to the fundies who keep interrupting me, how the smeg you're going to vary Earth turning, that which you're assuming is the thing you're trying to prove.
But I'm still on hypothesis, Nathan.
What about it?
Can you explain to me the steps of the scientific method?
Step 1, observe a natural phenomena. Step 2, formulate a scientific prediction, otherwise as a hypothesis, which will have both independent and dependent variables. Your dependent variable being the observed phenomena you observed at stage 1, and your independent variable being that which you assume causes the effect. Step 2 hypothesis will also have a null, the mirror opposite, which will state that that which you assume causes the effect does not cause the effect. Step 3, validation or invalidation by way of systematic experimentation. That is the scientific method. The section of this method I am particularly interested in this regard is the assumptive part. That would be the independent variable, that which you assume causes the effect. In this instance, we have a presupposition that's used when arguing that Earth is turning by way of presuming Earth is turning and demanding we accept all arguments for Coriolis take place on a non-inertial spinning reference frame, otherwise known as begging the question that Earth is turning in all examples. So, if we are going to equivocate that it is acceptable to have a presupposition or an assumption because a hypothesis has one, then I'm going to ask you whether or not you have a null, something that mirrors your presumption as incorrect. And if your presumption has been validated by step 3 in this method you are asking me about, that would be the systematic experimentation that proves or disproves that which you assume. So if we're going to assume Earth is turning, I want to know how it's been validated empirically by way of experimentation. Not a justification that a hypothesis does have a presupposition in it, because it does, and it also has the mirror opposite, saying that what you presume does not cause the effect. So a hypothesis is useless for claiming something happens because a hypothesis has got a null, which says the complete opposite. The Earth turn doesn't cause whatever the smeg you're claiming the phenomena is. I didn't get that far because Icy Meisty went no, no, no when I asked him for step 1 and said it was a colloquial hypothesis. So let's just get it clear before this absolute fuckwit tells me that I don't understand a hypothesis, which is usually the next step, that I do understand a hypothesis. And I'm talking about the begging the question fallacy used when assuming Earth turns and the justification thereof that in a hypothesis you have an assumption. Okay?
Right, so your step 1 is not to have an idea and pose a question.
No. Clearly you're deaf and can't listen. Try to pay attention to the words I actually say. Step 1. I'll say it slower for you, the retard, globe earth believer, who couldn't listen to what I said only 2 minutes earlier. Step 1. Observe natural phenomena.
Right, okay, that's nowhere in the scientific method. In the scientific method that I have asked about, yeah, nowhere and no one has ever said a natural phenomena. Yeah, the only person I ever hear asking for a natural...
It's a baseless assertion fallacy. Nobody has ever said it. It's the dependent variable in your hypothesis. If you had the vaguest notion what science was, you'd appreciate that a natural phenomena is your dependent variable. It's half of the hypothesis.
I think what he's trying to share is he's been misinformed by everyone all his life.
I don't care if he's stupid. He's saying, nowhere does it say that you need a natural phenomena to observe. The natural phenomena is the effect. Science is exclusively interested in cause and effect. The effect is the phenomena, you stupid retard! I'll say it again, because it was met with total silence from this dumb shit who's telling me I don't understand, of course, while he stutters and stammers his limited understanding of science to me. I understand what science is. It's exclusively interested in cause and effect relationships. The effect being the phenomena you're trying to study, you stupid bonehead.
Carry on.
You stupid dick. You are wrong. To assert that science doesn't have step 1 as observing a phenomena, when it's the effect you're trying to figure out the cause of, when it's half of your hypothesis, makes you certifiably stupid.
Right, okay, so Cambridge is wrong. Yeah?
You haven't cited anything. You haven't given any cowbell. You haven't given me any examples that you've then given a demonstration of how the methodology's been formulated. You've said Cambridge are wrong.
Yeah, because they told me that the first step in the scientific method is to have an idea and pose a question.
Pose a question? You think posing a question is something that can be established as a cause and effect? I'll ask again, because his dumbfounded silence says it all. You think asking a question is something that can be put through a method that establishes the cause of an effect? Second dumbfounded silence. Do you, the bonehead retard that has presumably just Google searched this 10 seconds ago, believe that asking a question can give you a question where it needs a cause and effect relationship answering? Third time.
Right, so how do you...
Don't ask me something! Do you think that asking a question will give rise to a circumstance that needs a cause and effect relationship establishing?
I think asking a question has to be your first step, because if you don't ask that question or have that thought, you're not going to have a hypothesis. You're not.
Really? Will I have chicken for tea tonight? That's a question that I've just asked. Now formulate that total shite into a scientific hypothesis. Whether or not I have chicken, a question that I've raised. Apparently this is step 1. Let's see if we get to step 2 with whether or not I'll have chicken dinner.
Right, so what's step 2 then, Nathan?
Will I be able to put with whether or not I have chicken dinner, a question I've asked, which is apparently, according to you, a retard, the first step of the scientific method. Apparently it's asking a question. Will I have chicken dinner tonight? Now let's see where your step 2... I've already given my step 2. Formulate scientific hypothesis. Establish independent and dependent variables and a null. I've already answered this question, but you're saying step 1 I've given, observe a natural phenomena, is wrong. And that in reality it's actually ask a question. So I'm asking a question, and I want to see how you get on formulating the question I've asked into step 2 of what you're now going to tell me is the scientific method. So the question is, will I have chicken dinner?
Ask your question. Instead of talking over people, and then when you don't hear it...
Sorry, this is your rebuttal, is it? You've said that step 1 is ask a question. I've said, here's my question, put it through step 2, or tell us what step 2 is, and your rebuttal is, you seem to be talking over me.
Step 2 is...
No, now you're screaming through me. Yeah? Is that how you think this works? No, that's not how this works. Yeah? You claimed step 1 is ask a question. Now we're putting that to test.
Your answer.
That's demanding answers of me. I've already given my answer. I gave you your answer. You asked me if I understood what the scientific method was, and I gave you all 3 steps, which is an established method of establishing cause and effect. That's what science is. You said wrong. Step 1 is ask a question.
So
saying...
What answers am I demanding from you, Nathan? What answers am I demanding from you? You just said he's now demanding answers from me. I'm not demanding any answers from you at all.
I'm demanding answers
What
from
answers am I demanding? Huh?
Highlander, you're the one being questioned right now, bro.
You made an assertion.
You don't get it?
You made an assertion in regards to me being incorrect about what the scientific method was.
His questions, but he keeps shouting over me, and then after I finished answering him, he then screams and shouts, "Oh, total silence, no answers from them." Yeah, that's because you've just talked over my answer.
Did you not just tell him that the first step is ask a question? Did you not just say that?
Thought. Ask a question.
Ask a question, sure. So he just asked a question and is telling you to formulate that into a hypothesis.
His research.
Did you hear his question?
But he shouted over me.
No, he's just going to go into victim mode. I'm being talked over is what he's now doing, rather than addressing what we've actually put to him. If you're to assert that step 1 is ask a question, and I say, am I going to have roast chicken tonight? Let's see how that goes in the next step. And you go, well, no, that doesn't formulate into the next step because it's not a phenomena, right? It's not an effect that we need to study, whether or not I'm going to have chicken dinner tonight. Yeah? So your ask a question nonsense gets eradicated by us asking this question. But what you will do as the fundy fuckwit here is you'll tell us that I'm just talking over you. That's all you've got to defend yourself.
Yeah, because that's what you
do. You see? So he's not going to address the fact that he's established with his assertion that step 1 is ask a question, and that's demolished by me asking a question about whether or not I'll have chicken dinner. Not a phenomena that you're going to study to establish the cause of it. Not at all. Just a random question that anybody can ask, making his first assertion about the first step of the scientific method completely pointless and totally stupid. But there's absolutely no way he'll accept that or address it. He'll just say, I'm being talked over. Oh no. And by doing so, he'll never actually listen to the question again. That's the only tactic they've ever got. Obfuscate the question so you don't have to answer it. Play victim and martyr and claim you've been talked over, rather than listening to the question. Talk through it when it's midway through.
Up and listen to the answer then.
Will I have chicken
You
dinner
said
tonight?
step 1. I'm thinking about having chicken dinner for tonight. Yeah. So step 2 would be your research.
Yeah. What's step 3?
Step 3 is hypothesis.
Oh, right.
Step 4 is your experiment.
I don't need anything beyond step 3. So hypothesis. And what are the constituent parts of a hypothesis?
A hypothesis is an educated guess.
Yeah, that would be your independent variable. That's half of the hypothesis. What's the other half?
What?
You dumb fuck. That's half a hypothesis. What's the other half of the hypothesis?
Never heard what you said. Yeah? You're just a rude, nasty, evil person.
No, that's an ad hominem attack. That's another logical fallacy. I've asked a question. He's not capable of answering. He went, what? So I'll try again. I'm keeping the live show going just to see if this dumbo can actually answer my question. Or just talk through me non-stop. We'll see. So that's half a hypothesis. Your assumption. No, you can't do it, can you, Fundy? Is it just that by talking through me you don't get to hear the question? Is that your tactic now? That's half a hypothesis. Yeah? Your presumption of what is the cause, and I'm asking you what the other half of the hypothesis is.
But your hypothesis is an educated guess, right?
The third time. Half of the hypothesis is your educated guess in regards to what caused, and now I'm asking you what the other half of the hypothesis is.
Why does a hypothesis need to...
Now he's asking me a question. Yeah, that doesn't fly here, fundy dick brain. I'm asking you for the other half of a hypothesis. You've got to step 4 in your method, and your method
Nathan,
says formulate.
Let him ask his question, Nathan. Let him ask his question and then answer his question. It's a legitimate question.
I've given you the explanation of a hypothesis.
No, you've given us half.
Now you're asking
no, you
for
haven't.
multiple parts.
No, you have not. You have given us half.
I told you it was an educated guess.
That's half.
Yeah?
I'll say you're just going around in circles and rumpusing my point so you don't have to address it. That's not a hypothesis. That's half of a hypothesis. And I want to know what the other half is, because it's the demolition of your argument. It's my point. But you're not answering. You're saying it's just an educated guess. No, that's not a hypothesis. That's half of the alternative hypothesis. What's the other half?
So what's an alternative hypothesis?
I don't
Nathan?
need to educate you in science. You're supposed to be telling me that I'm wrong based on your version, and now you're talking. You're just a rude man. You're just talking through me all the time, rude man. You're just talking through me all the time, rude man. I was in the middle of a sentence. You're laughing up, Fundy. You're being obliterated. You're now asking me what an alternative hypothesis is, which admirably demonstrates that you haven't got the vaguest clue what a hypothesis is. But in your version of what a hypothesis is, you have stated quite clearly that it's a prediction.
It's an educated guess.
And now you're talking through me again, aren't you, rude man? It's troubling, I know.
Yes.
So don't.
I know.
Yeah, you've only given us... Yeah, it's back to the same point that you keep obfuscating. You've only given us half the hypothesis, and I want the other half. You could just have some humility and say, I don't know what the other half is, demonstrated by me having to ask what an alternative hypothesis is. You could just say, I don't know, and then I'll tell you.
I gave you your hypothesis.
You gave me half.
It's not my fault.
It's not. You're giving me half a hypothesis, is leaving out the bit that makes my point.
Oh.
And you just don't want to listen?
It hurts
Fundy?
your brain. I know.
Don't want to listen? You want to talk through me? You've given me half.
I'm here for you, buddy. I'm here for you. Don't worry. We'll get through this.
What?
There's no need
the
to
other
get
half of
upset.
the hypothesis. It's not just the prediction. The other half you haven't detailed and still haven't. Okay, you seem to be laughing.
Nathan,
about
I'm
it.
just fucking with you, mate.
You just fucking with me? No. You are a retard. You don't know what the other half of the hypothesis is. You haven't got the vaguest notion what science is. You've wiki searched it, and now you're parroting off whatever Cambridge said in that wiki search you did, and you're having your ass handed to you. We've got to step 4 in your claim to be scientific method, and it says establish a hypothesis. You've said it's a best guess. I've pointed out that's only half a hypothesis, and when we get to this stage, rather than having some humility and saying, I don't know what the other half is, you're going to say, I've given it you. That's the end of my expertise. I can't detail what it is. That just makes you a complete fucking retard. It doesn't mean that you're fucking with me. It means I'm admirably demonstrating how stupid you are. Now, you don't have to like that, and you can attempt to obfuscate every time I ask you for the other half of the hypothesis, and you can tell me you've given it me 50 times. You haven't. When we finally get there, I will just summarise the other half of the hypothesis and point out exactly why this idiot is laughing.
He's gone insane.
Is this how you cope with stress? This is a coping mechanism, is it? When you're under a high degree of stress, you go into fits of giggles when you're having your ass handed to you.
Question. Here's a question for the...
No. This isn't a question for me. I'm asking you for the other half of the hypothesis. We're at step 4 of your claim to be method, and we're at the hypothesis stage. You've said it's a best guess prediction, and I've said that's only half the hypothesis. What's the other half? This is all based on me stating that step 1 is observe a natural phenomena. And the other half of the hypothesis is not only your presumed cause, it's also what it's causing. The effect. Now, that effect is a naturally occurring phenomena. Yeah? Something that he said, it says nowhere, anywhere, that you need a natural phenomena, even though it's half of the hypothesis. Now, I know Chuckles here thinks that his ignorance is extremely amusing or thinks his ignorance is actually him messing with me, it isn't. It's yet another demonstratable retard coming here after a quick wiki search and having their ass handed to them by people who do actually understand what science is, that do understand that asserting your Earth is spinning as the starting premise of your argument is begging the question, and a justification that science uses assumptions, science uses assumptions that they can verify with experimentation, and the experimentation uses the assumption of the cause of the effect, the phenomena we're studying. Now, in the case of a presupposition of a spinning ball Earth, the claim to be phenomena that you're never going to put through the scientific method is going to be a Coriolis deviation, or the lack thereof, depending on which funder you are. Yeah? Well, that assumption's never going to be verified by science with any empiricism, because you can't vary that which you assume causes the effect. So rather than putting it through science, what you do is say it's acceptable to beg the question. It's okay to just automatically assume, because in science they have assumptions in hypotheses, don't they? Yeah, they do, but they also verify them or prove them to be incorrect by testing them. And how do they test them? By varying what they assume. And these fundies are never going to vary Earth turning, because Earth doesn't turn. It's just a presupposition. And with that, I'll say if you are watching this on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you're watching this live on the Nathan Oakley 1980 stream, then this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat. I think there was actually one I didn't read out. Let's have a look. Globe Zombies, Dispinning Balls Doctrine, Pseudoscience from Earth is Seriously Flat. Thank you very much for the super chat. Earth is Seriously Flat, really appreciate your support. Also, a massive thank you to all of today's live panel for making this live debate possible. As I say, stay tuned if you're watching on Nathan Oakley premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
We could barely get in between there. I had to
Winner,
leave for
chicken
chocolate
dinner.
for interruptions. Now you know how it is.
Yep.
Shut up, Chocolate.
He had some nuggets there, eh, Chocolate?
Yeah, man.
My goodness, that was absolutely beautiful.
What was beautiful?
Your stupidity.
Nathan's chicken dinner?
No.
Trying to listen to you formulate, am I going to eat chicken dinner into an experiment? This is your wonderful first step.
A scientific experiment may start with a question, okay? But that doesn't mean that every question you could ask could be turned into a scientific hypothesis. That is just ridiculous.
Oh, fun. You know, maybe if you guys put the crack pipe down, you might actually come back to reality.
Another ad hominem attack. So rather than addressing the argument, he's attacking us personally, claiming we are drug addicts, rather than addressing the argument. Maybe it's a bit of projection. Maybe he's had a crack issue in his life sometime.
I'm just wondering how this crazy nincompoop could... excuse me. I'm just wondering how you could ask a question before you see an effect.
Yeah, the question you've got to ask is about the effect, the dependent variable. But if you just start by saying you've got to ask a question, well, that's malformed, because you could ask a question about whether or not you're going to eat chicken dinner.
Worst part is, as soon as he said that as the first step, he should have known a silly question was going to follow, because you just said ask a question, right? Should have known. I don't know how you didn't. Not too bright. Maybe you should put the crack pipe down. Maybe.
But let's just take the fact that I like Formula One into consideration, right? And I'm sitting watching Formula One, and I think to myself, I have a thought, a theory that I could make a better material for the cars, yeah, to make the drivers a little bit safer, right? So what's my observed natural phenomena there?
That's not science. That's technology.
I mean, the Formula One.
Question
do
is,
you want to hear the,
are
do you want to hear the
even
reply?
using?
Is technology not part of science? So now you're telling me that technology is not part of science?
No, it's not.
No. God.
Yes, that's what we're telling you. Yes, Dumbo. That's correct.
Right, so technology is not part of science.
Yeah, let me say it again. Technology.
Go on then, please.
But obviously it was troubling because it's your assertion being smashed, so that's troubling and you must interrupt. Science is not technology. Technology is not science. Is that clear?
But so, yeah, I'm just
The first hint would be that there are two different words. That's just the first hint.
Part of science.
Nathan, do you want to read?
You go ahead, Anthony. I've got you presented.
This is an EDU website from a university of something. I can't remember what it is. I'll come back to it in a sec. It says, one of the mistakes that many people make in thinking about science is to confuse it with technology. As a result, science often receives undue credit or undue blame. In fact, science doesn't make things. Scientists developed the understanding of radiation sufficient for the invention of the microwave oven, but neither making the microwave oven nor using it are science. Scientists are in the business of generating knowledge, whereas engineers are in the business of generating technology. People doing science often use sophisticated technology, but science does not require it. Our ecologist observing natural bird behavior and geologist examining outcrops neither use particularly sophisticated technology. In fact, the only technology common to all scientists is the notebook in which the observations are recorded. In short, science often leads to technology and it uses technology, but it isn't technology. And in fact, it operates quite independently of technology.
Thank you, Anthony. Science is not technology. Technology is not science. Yo, dude, technology is not science. Dude, you don't seem to be interrupting us anymore.
Come on, Highlander. Let's go.
I think Chuckles is gone. Chuckles.
No, he's still here.
Oh.
I'm just making coffee. I'll be back to mess with you in a minute.
Mess with us? You're not messing with us. You're demonstrating your stupidity over and over and over again. Are you saying that science isn't technology? Yeah, that's because it isn't. We appreciate by your question that you thought it was, and that you are dumb as all shit. We appreciate that. But you think you're going to come back and mess with us? Yeah? When you tell us that a hypothesis is just a prediction, when it's the prediction of a cause that you observe as an effect. Yeah? But of course, no, science has never asserted that you need an observed phenomena. No, that's what you assert, you absolute dumb shit. So what, you're going to come back with us and, demonstrate over and over again just how stupid you really are? Yeah, you go make your coffee, mate. Yeah, you can come back and have us demonstrate to our audience just how stupid you are, as long as you're here.
A beautiful show, Nathan. You handled them perfectly. Just knockout punch right in the first round, and the ref kept him in the fight, and he just got pummeled ever since.
But how quick they are to point out that it's acceptable to beg the question. So we've gone round this circle of bloody Coriolis effect for a couple of weeks now. When we get to the point that we go, okay, let's concisely summarise the outcome here. What they're trying to do is make you beg the question of an Earth that's spinning by saying we're on a non-inertial spinning reference frame at the start of every single argument. In other words, we're on a spinning ball Earth at the beginning of this argument. That's essentially what they're saying. In other words, begging the question. The next thing out the fundy on the panel's mouth, R.C. Meister, is to say it's acceptable to make an assumption because in scientific predictions that will go forth to be validated, they have a presumption. So therefore it's okay for me to presume Earth spinning, because that's what we do in science, until I say, is this science? And then there's lots of stony silences and rumpusing. Because obviously this isn't science, it's just a justification for them assuming Earth's spinning whenever they argue about Earth spinning.
I just see it as kind of like the gas pressure thing. I mean, the necessary antecedent to Coriolis is Earth rotation. So prove Earth rotation that we could talk about Coriolis.
Yeah, exactly. Let's not beg the question.
Up there then.
Pardon?
Oh, he's back some more.
On to a different
Yeah, I'm
subject.
back. So prove there's a container above the Earth's atmosphere.
We don't
See,
make
Nathan
those
claims
assertions.
that every day.
Oh, sorry. I don't ever claim what the sky is. There is an outstanding claim from the religion of heliocentrism.
Oh, you see, there's a dome
See,
up there.
whenever I start to summarise the fundamentalist globetard position, this arsehole thinks that that means it's his turn to talk. Now, I'm in no doubt whatsoever when I finish this, he'll say that I've talked over him, and he'll project the fact that he's just literally interrupted me while I'm in the middle of pointing out that your globe religion has a positive assertion about what the sky is. Now, I've not at any stage in this conversation with you told you what the sky is, but there is absolutely a positive assertion that it's a vacuum, a violation of several laws of nature. So there is a positive assertion. We don't have to prove to you what the sky is in order to demolish the assertion that it's a vacuum next to gas pressure. That's the positive assertion. I don't know what the sky is, and I'm not making any claims in that regard. I'm just destroying your religious faith in space. I don't need to provide any alternative to destroy your religion in a sky vacuum.
So you don't have a religious belief that the Earth is flat and stationary.
So back to another red herring. We were talking about gas pressure. Now it's back to him making an assertion about a claim we haven't made in this argument. That's another red herring fallacy.
You say it's up there, Nathan. That's what we were talking about, not gas pressure. See? So you're the one that deviates things all the time.
Chocolate brought up to gas pressure. Now you segued away to a claim about the Earth being flat.
Hey, Chuckles, demonstrate gas pressure without a container, please.
Up there. And you went on a 5-minute rant about the Earth spinning and fundy religious beliefs like you always do. Yeah? Because by the time you finish your rant, people have forgotten what the fuck it was you started ranting about.
All right, I can summarise it. I'm really good at that. I can be really concise. You can't have gas pressure without a container. Without the container, there can be no pressure. And while I summarise this, it means it's his cue to talk over me. Maybe he'll project again after this that I'm talking over him. Right? No, I'm not. I'm summarising the point that you say is really difficult to wrap your head around. Maybe if you shut your mouth while I summarise it really concisely, you'd understand. There's a positive assertion that the sky is a vacuum. And without a container, there can be no pressure. Yeah, that's a quote from Conspiracy Cat, someone who's on your side of this fundamentalist religious argument about the Earth being a ball with gas pressure in a vacuum. Like I say, that's a violation of a law of nature. Now, me, I don't know what the sky is, and I try and avoid making any positive assertions in that regard because I simply don't know. What I do know is what it isn't, and it isn't what your side of the argument claims it is, and that's a sky vacuum.
So if you haven't been up there, how do you know what it's not?
I don't know what it is or isn't. I don't know what the sky is. But I do know that you need a container to have gas pressure. It's the necessary antecedent. And we do have gas pressure. So, based on an antecedent consequent relationship, I can easily say the sky is not a vacuum. Because without the container, there can be no pressure. It is as simple as that.
So there's a container up there. What?
Without the container, there can be no pressure. So if you're to assert that there isn't a container and the sky is a vacuum, I would simply say your assertion that the sky is a vacuum is incorrect. Because without the container, there can be no pressure.
Do me a favour, Nathan. Just say the words, there is a container up there. It's not hard.
Just say, I like to thieve things because I'm a thief. Just say that.
You can do it, Nathan. Come on.
Come on. Just say it. Just say on record, I'm a thieving bastard. Just say that for me, just once.
Come on, Nathan.
Come on, just say it. Say you're a thieving bastard. Just say it once.
You can say it. Come on.
What? You don't like the fact that I don't leave you any angle to attack me with, because I don't make any assertions. Yeah, there is an outstanding assertion about what the sky is. It's claimed to be a vacuum by fundamentalist religious zealots who believe the Earth is a sphere. They assert that it's a vacuum. Me, I don't make that assertion. But when that assertion's made, I point out that without the container, there can be no pressure. And the Earth definitely has gas pressure. Therefore, the sky is definitely not a vacuum. So that's the assertion I make. Now, I appreciate that you really want me to say that there's a dome. I know that. But I don't make that assertion because I don't need to. I don't know what the sky is. But there are people out there who claim that they do know what the sky is. And in fact, there's a whole religion based on it, called heliocentrism, with the sun at the centre and the Earth as a sphere, travelling through a vacuum. So when we look up from our claim to be sphere at the blue sky above us, apparently that's an infinitely expanding vacuum. And I can crap all over that by saying without the container, there can be no pressure. And with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who did join us on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. Another massive thank you to all of today's panel on Discord and G+, for making this show possible. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!